Hello, I'm Christopher Apostle, the Director of the Projects Committee of Save Venice. I want to welcome you today to what will be one of a series of short videos exploring the exciting work that Save Venice is doing leading up to the celebration of our anniversary in 2021. Over the next few weeks, my colleagues on the committee and I will be taking our own personal look at individual projects and restorations, things that have special meaning to each of us. I hope this will give you an idea of the breadth and the depth of some of the important work that Save Venice is doing to conserve, preserve, and restore the culture and art of that city that we all love so much. Now, this week it's my turn, and as you know, I like new beginnings. I like beginnings of new video series, I like the beginnings of new books, I like the beginnings of new projects at work, and certainly like the beginnings of new projects at Save Venice. So those of you who know me well will not be surprised that I've chosen as my special restoration, my focus today, something that is emblematic, not only of the origins of Venetian art, but of the city of Venice itself. The small island of Torcello, which is marked in the upper right of your screen at the moment, is an important part of the early history of Venice. And as we know, the very early beginnings of Venice were scattered about the lagoon with settlements here and there. But it was on the island of Torcello that the citizens of the Roman city of Altinum decided to move, to escape the depredations of the Huns, the incursions of the Lombards, and they were able to find on this scraggy, marshy little island a safe refuge, a safe haven, where they could begin to become prosperous and more wealthy. And in fact, they turned this small island into a major hub, major commercial hub, not only for the northern part of the Adriatic Sea, but throughout the entire eastern part of Mediterranean. They prospered, as I said, and prospered so much that they were able to build this magnificent church. And this is the Basilica of Santa Maria Assunta, the cathedral and the seat of the Bishop of Torcello. It is the oldest surviving structure in the entirety of the lagoon, dates to 639, so about 2 centuries even before the very beginnings of the Basilica of San Marco itself. And as such, it probably deserves its own special video. Now, it went through several modifications, most especially in 1006, which added quite a bit onto the existing structure, and that brought it to very close to what we see here today. But it's not the church itself that I'll be discussing, although it is worthy, as I said, but the lavish decoration inside, which was undertaken several decades after this amplification of the church at the beginning of the 11th century. Now, as I mentioned, the building itself is a basilica, and it adheres pretty closely to the classic idea. The basilica was an ancient Roman civic design, which was adapted early on by the early Christian church for ecclesiastical use. And here you see it adheres pretty much to the classic form. There's a long central nave backed by an apse with aisles on the left and on the right side. Now here in the apse, we see several bits of the decoration that was undertaken at various phases. On the bottom level, right behind the seat of the bishop, are some beautiful marble slabs. Earlier fresco decoration is visible on the left. In the middle band, on either side of the window, is this rather whimsical series of saints, Peter, Paul, but also some local saints, dressed in this rather quirky, quasi-Roman, quasi-Byzantine fashion. But I'm sure the local Torcellese would have viewed them as exemplifying absolute sainthood. But it's really the lady behind, or up above, rather, that I wish to discuss today. Now, the apse itself is part of our major push and major restoration for our 50th anniversary. And the mosaic of the Madonna and Child in the apse, this grand, monumental, glorious depiction of the Virgin Mary as Queen of Heaven, is underwritten very generously by John and Barbara Landau, both the exterior wall and the interior mosaics. Here we see the Virgin holding the infant Christ standing. You can see at the bottom, she's standing on a dais, again, to exemplify her position, her regal position as Queen of Heaven, which is set with little fictive pearls and gems to make it very luxurious and very, as I said, regal. Up above, you see the depiction of the Annunciation on either side of the arch, with the Archangel Gabriel at the left, the Virgin Annunciata on the right, and quite long Latin inscriptions in mosaic. When you get closer, you can see the stunning quality of this mosaic. The Virgin herself is draped, really shrouded almost, in a very heavy, dark blue cloak, which the Greeks called a maphorion, and that is the typical way to show the Virgin at this point. She has herself decorated with little trimmings of gold fringe, which I rather love, the ones at her shoulder and across her waist. And of course, the edge of her cloak is also trimmed with gold. The star symbols on her shoulder and on her forehead are representations of her position as the Virgin Mary. She was known as not just the Virgin Mary, but the Ever Virgin Mary. And these are symbols that anyone visiting, any faithful visitor to the Basilica at that time would have understood. Just in case you forget who she is, the mosaicists have added her Greek symbols on the left and right of her head. The letters on the left and the right signifying the Mater Theou, the Mother of God. So we know exactly who she is. She holds in her arm the infant Christ, I would say rather precariously, sort of perched there on her forearm, who's dressed even more lavishly. What appears to be cloth of gold, a red mantle, and a blue tunic woven with gold. Again, just to make sure that you understand that he is the King of Heaven. Now, part of the reason this particular restoration has a great deal of significance for me is not the antiquity of it, and we think that this probably dates from as early as 1080 to maybe into the very early years of the 12th century. It is perhaps one of the oldest restorations we've ever done at St. Venice. And the monumental size is also quite amazing. But as you'll see in other videos in this series, we're working on other monumental works of art. But rather, it's something much more personal. It is, in fact, my own Greek heritage that speaks to me in this particular case. We believe that the quality of these mosaics suggests that it wasn't a local Venetian mosaicist who undertook this work, but someone visiting from the mainland of Greece, or perhaps even from the capital of Constantinople itself. Also, the image itself is something that is very, very personal. This is a type of virgin called the Virgin Hodegetria, or the Virgin who shows the way. And her gesture, like this, to the infant Christ, shows that he is the way for man's salvation. He's the true path to heaven. And this is an image and a pose that gets repeated not only in Eastern art, but into the West for many, many, many years, and even survives down to this day. In fact, I have here in my own collection, which I'll show you, an 18th century Greek icon of the same composition. And it's a bit battered up because, you know, icons were meant to be used and kissed and adored. And in this case, but it shows that this pose of the Virgin Mary survives and continues down in the East and the West together. Now, the image of the Virgin Hodegetria is something that also has a very important significance theologically and culturally, both in the East and the West. I'm showing you here this icon of the triumph of orthodoxy painted in Constantinople in about 1400, but it represents a scene that happened many, many centuries earlier in 834, when the images, the icons that had been destroyed during the second phase of iconoclasm in the Eastern Empire were put back on the altar. And here you have the Empress Theodora at the left, not the Theodora, the earthy incredible Theodora that we know and love from Ravenna, but a subsequent Empress Theodora who became a saint for putting back the icons on their altars and reestablishing the veneration of the icons. And here we see in the center the icon of the Hodegetria, which was preserved in Constantinople at the church of the monastery of the Odegon. And this was something of great special significance. After the return of the icons, it was said to have been painted by St. Luke himself. It was one of those miraculous images, and we spend a lot of time, I know, talking about St. Mark at St. Venice, but in fact, St. Luke, the evangelist, was the great painter, and this was a miraculous image and charged with special powers. And so it was reproduced all throughout the Greek world and even in Venice. To make this point even perhaps more close to home, I wanted to show you this rather beautiful plaquette of the Virgin Hodegetria, a gilt copper plaque, which dates to about the same time we think that the mosaics at Torcello in the apse were done. And here we see again the standing Virgin, and she stands again on a little dais, denoting her position as Queen of Heaven. We can't tell as well as we can in the mosaic, but it looks like that also is set with precious stones, perhaps gems. And again, we have her designation as the Mater Dei, the Mother of God, on either side of her. What's wonderful about this, though, is that it was actually found on the island of Torcello. Now it's at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. But a later inscription, also in Greek, not in Latin, interestingly, suggests that it was dedicated to a 13th century bishop in Torcello called Philip. So this connection and this image had a currency all throughout the Greek world, and the fact that it was chosen for the apse at Torcello shows, you know, the local population's desire to have the most up-to-date, most current image of the Virgin Mary. So why is it important? And why are the restorations at Torcello so important? Now, this splendid art, of course, as I said, is amongst the most ancient and elaborate mosaics that have survived to us. Many of them throughout the world, the Greek and Eastern world, destroyed during the various forms of the iconoclasms. But for me, talking about my theme of beginnings, it's really one of the first steps in Venice's own artistic development. The love of luxury, the love of gold, the love of color, the love of drama that we so much associate with all phases of Venetian art, already evident in this mosaic. More than anywhere else in Italy, Venice really adhered to the Byzantine tradition. It became part of their cultural DNA. And we'll see in other works that we're restoring, like Paolo Veneziano, etc., that it continues, even though they begin to adapt and form their own language. I can even see distant echoes of it 4 centuries later in the works of Giovanni Bellini and the San Zaccaria altarpiece and the San Giobbe altarpiece, which are also shown with the Madonna in an apse with mosaic decorations. These echoes continue, and must have had special significance to a Venetian audience. So it's at this beginning of Venice's story and the beginning of her art that fascinates me so much. This is all part of why this is chosen to become one of our signature restorations for our 50th anniversary, the cradle of Venetian art, the cradle of Venetian history, and something that I think we at Save Venice are extremely proud of. Now, I know some of you may not like mosaics and want to look at different kinds of work that we're doing. I invite you to go to our website, and I've put it up here on the screen, to see all the various types of restorations and projects we're doing, from the Middle Ages all the way up to the 19th century. We're constantly looking for new things. Anything that you'd like to do to get involved, I invite you to check out our website and call me or call any of my colleagues in the New York office or in the Venice office. And I certainly hope that you'll be joining a lot of my other colleagues in the coming weeks, looking at their favorite restorations and what has made them so passionate. Thanks so much.